Did Sushang just say rise Pete? Sushang, could you say that again?
Rise, Phoenix!
Hey everyone, it's Sevi. Welcome to my guide on Cloud Knight Sushang, our 4-star Physical Hunt DPS who battles with her large greatsword and an even larger, chicken. Thanks to her sword stance mechanics and fast turn rate, Sushang has incredible potential to output high single target damage when used effectively. In this video, I'll be discussing her abilities, gameplay tips, Eidolons, Relic and Lightcone builds, and team synergies to help you maximize this 4-star wonder. Let's get into it!
I'm Sushang, and I recently joined the Cloud Knights. Talk to me if you have any issues.
The most important aspect to understand about Sushang's kit is her sword stance and how to maximize it, since much of her damage potential comes from that. On top of that, she has innate speed and advanced forward buffs that make her a fast and formidable DPS. To start, Sushang's skill deals physical damage, but it also has a 33% chance to trigger sword stance, which deals extra physical damage. By itself, it's an unreliable chance. However, if you hit the enemy when they're already broken, or if your skill breaks the enemy, then sword stance is guaranteed to trigger. As much as possible, you want to use your skill on a broken or about to be broken enemy to output more damage. Otherwise, use Sushang's skill to get closer to breaking the enemy's toughness so you can guarantee sword stance sooner. If you hit them with their toughness still intact, then you're subject to RNG, which makes your damage output more inconsistent. Having the right team and strategy to break enemies is also important to maximize Sushang's damage. Her ultimate further builds on this break-focused playstyle. Casting it summons a giant chicken to body slam the enemy, deal huge physical damage, and reduce a lot of toughness, but it comes with important additional effects. Her ultimate advances her forward by 100%, which immediately bumps her up next in the action queue, and for 2 turns she gets an attack bonus, and her skill can trigger sword stance 2 more times, effectively making her skill able to deal up to 3 sword stance procs. These additional procs are also guaranteed if the enemy is broken, which further emphasizes the importance of breaking enemies. If you combine her skill and ultimate's advance forward, this creates Sushang's core combo. Use her skill followed by her ultimate right away. This advances her and lets you cast her skill again. That's a lot of potential front-loaded single target damage, especially against a broken enemy, and also an effective way to rapidly break physical toughness. It's also useful when fighting enemy mobs, as she can effectively hit or help break up to 3 different enemies if needed. Be mindful of when you're casting her ultimate too. You don't want to use it when she's about to get her turn already, as that wastes her advance forward. Instead, if her turn is already near, and even if its energy cost is full, you generally want to wait for her turn first to use her skill ult skill combo in order to maximize the advance effect. Also, you want to prepare the needed skill points to pull off this combo, which is 2 points without her E1. If you don't have the skill point for the first or second skill, it's not the end of the world, but it won't maximize her potential damage. There are also rotation variations you can do with this combo. First is just using the skill, then spamming ult right away to get her turn back. This will just queue her up instantly, leaving no room for any other teammate to take their turn if you want Sushang to break and damage the enemy as fast as possible. However, if a teammate is next in line in the action queue, you could also use Sushang's skill, but don't use her ultimate right away to let that next teammate take a turn first. There might be scenarios where this could prove advantageous, like having a teammate help break the enemy faster so Sushang's next sword stances could be guaranteed, or making a teammate apply a buff on her first or generate a skill point for her before she continues her combo. Then, right after the teammate does their action, trigger Sushang's ultimate and skill combo. Those are 2 different routes, but ultimately you can adapt according to the situation to use her combo in the most efficient way possible. Moving on, another important ability, and what makes her even faster, is her talent. It gives a speed increase for 2 turns when an enemy gets a weakness break. It doesn't have to be Sushang herself that breaks, but rather it can be any ally that breaks, and Sushang will still get the speed bonus. Let's also take a look at her bonus abilities, and one of them makes her go even faster. Ascension 2 makes her less likely to get attacked when at 50% HP or lower. This basically helps with her survivability, which is nice, though if you're using the right team, it should be easy to aggro enemies away from her in the first place or keep her HP high. What might put her more in danger are AoE attacks, which this ability does not help with. Ascension 4 gives her sword stance a 2% damage bonus whenever it triggers, and this can stack up to 10 times, resulting in 20% damage bonus. This is a good straightforward damage boosting passive that you want to ramp up as fast as possible. And Ascension 6 makes her basic attack or skill advance her forward by 15% if an enemy on the field has a weakness break. Couple this with her own speed boost, and Sushang really gets her turns in faster than usual. For most players, they still haven't reached the needed level to unlock this trace yet, but once you do, it's an amazing boost for Sushang. With all of Sushang's speed and turn advancing effects, she can move faster, more easily hit speed targets, and get more turns in cycles, leading to potentially more damage, faster breaking, and faster energy generation. However, because of Sushang's fast turn rate and skill dependence, Sushang is a very skill point hungry unit. As such, she needs a team that can consistently generate the points she needs and not let her run out of steam. However, her first Eidolon is a massive quality of life improvement that helps a lot in alleviating her skill point consumption, which I'll talk about very soon. One more ability is her technique. It initiates combat and makes her deal physical damage at the start. This could be useful to more easily pick off small enemy mobs or break the enemies faster for Sushang to trigger her sword stance. As for her trace's leveling up priority, her skill and ultimate are both important, so I would prioritize them, followed by her talent. Ultimately, all three of them are valuable, so the goal is to equally level them up anyway. Her basic attack can be left alone to save your resources. Unlock her ascension abilities as they come along too, but her A4 and A6 are the most important. You might also notice that her trace stat boosts are attack, HP, and defense, when either HP or defense could have been physical damage bonus instead, which makes more sense with her as a damage dealer. As such, prioritize her attack bonus traces first. Let's also go through Sushang's Eidolons, and there's one particular Eidolon that's a huge game changer for Sushang. That is E1, which lets her refund a skill point when she uses her skill against an enemy with a weakness break. What makes this a massive upgrade is that it helps address her skill point hungriness. It's a huge quality of life improvement for your team rotation, skill point economy, and ultimately achieving her optimal playstyle. Best of all, it's her earliest Eidolon too. While an E0 Sushang is still good, having E1 is the best way to enjoy her. Next, E2 gives Sushang a 20% damage reduction for one turn when she triggers Sword Stance. This is purely for adding survivability with her, though it can be underutilized if you are trying to aggro enemies away, and especially when her A2 bonus ability is active. But it can help when you actually want her to get hit in order to generate more energy, which I'll discuss a bit more in the team section later. E3 increases her ultimate and talent level by 2. E4 increases her break effect by 40%. It's a nice damage increase if you can maximize her breaking abilities, just remember that it has to be her hit that breaks the enemy for this to matter. E5 increases her skill and basic attack levels. And finally, E6 makes her talent speed boost stackable up to 2 times, and Sushang immediately gets 1 stack of this upon entering battle. This translates to a higher speed ceiling for her and would be worth taking into consideration when building her. E6 gives her more innate speed gains, so her relic stats could benefit more from other offensive stats like attack instead. Now let's go to building Sushang's relic stats and sets. The stats are pretty much straightforward. For the body piece, you want crit rate or crit damage to get you to the ideal 1:2 crit ratio. Don't forget to factor in other sources of crit like light cones or allies. Most likely though, you'll want a crit rate piece. If you don't have one yet, attack will temporarily do. For the feat piece, speed and attack are very strong contenders and mostly a case of it depends. A speed piece helps get in more turns over time, which is more valuable the longer a battle is. It's also the easiest way to permanently trigger the 120 speed requirement of the Space Ceiling Station Ornament set. But remember that Sushang already has her own innate speed buffing and advanced forward effects, which can already help a lot with her speed targets and turn rate. So with an attack piece, the trade-off is that she hits harder, which still translates to more overall damage and can be more beneficial in shorter battles. Substat quality is also a huge factor, as one piece with incredible substats will trump the other. So a general rule of thumb could be just go for whichever better quality piece you have. Of course, keep your good pieces of either stats to have options in the long run. Then for the Planar Sphere and Link Rope, get physical damage bonus and attack percent. If you don't have a good physical damage piece, attack will do in the meantime. If you are considering a break effect Link Rope, that could be viable for the early game when breaking is an efficient way to deal damage. However, attack percent is the long-term goal as your build progresses. For the substats, crit, attack, and speed are your main targets. Break effect is less preferable, but it's not an entirely useless stat to get. If you're not sure how break effect works, check out my previous guide video linked in the description later. For her relic sets, you have 3 options. The top one is the 4-piece Champion of Streetwise Boxing, which gives 10% physical damage bonus and attack that stacks by hitting enemies or getting hit. A full set is also conveniently purchasable in the Bellabog shop. Coming in close is a combo of the 2-piece Champion set and 2-piece Musketeer of Wild Wheat, which gives an unconditional 12% attack bonus. Between these options, when the Champion set has the full stacks, the total stat difference is 13% attack. You can narrow or close the gap simply by having better substats on the 2-piece 2-piece set combo. The 4-piece Musketeer set is also a very viable option. The basic attack bonus of the 4-piece effect is mostly useless on Sushang, but it's the 6% speed bonus that can benefit her, and with good substats this can still be a competitive set. In the early game though, since you get a lot of the Shooting Meteor set which gives break effect and Musketeer pieces for free, you could just stick to combinations of those pieces with great substats until something better comes along to replace them. As for the Planar ornaments, the Space Sealing Station is her preferred set for its attack bonuses, and you want to have 120 speed innately to permanently activate its second bonus effect. A second option is the Inert Salsoto, which gives crit rate and ultimate damage bonus if you hit 50% crit rate. However, going with the Space Sealing Station is just a better general option, but as always, substat quality could skew your choice between one or the other. Next up, let's look at Sushang's Light Cone options. In the night is the limited Zila Light Cone, which is also top tier for Sushang thanks to its high base stats, crit rate bonus, and damage bonuses that increase depending on how much speed the user has, which synergizes really well with her talent speed buff. Sleep Like the Dead is the next 5-star option. It also has high base stats, increases crit damage, and buffs the user's crit rate for 1 turn if their basic attack or skill does not crit. This effect has a cooldown of 3 turns, but at least Sushang's fast turn rate can help re-trigger it faster. Cruising in the Stellar Sea is another 5-star but free-to-play friendly option that's purchasable in Herta's store. It gives crit rate and more against enemies with 50% or lower HP. If the user defeats an enemy, they get an attack buff for 2 turns, so its full potential is reliant on killing enemies consistently. But all in all, it's free, very solid, and you can superimpose it in the long run. Next are the 4-star options. Swordplay, featuring Sushang herself, is a very competitive 4-star option that gives a stacking damage bonus when you hit one enemy repeatedly. This has very strong potential for single target focus fire damage, though note that Sushang's sword stance hits don't count towards the damage stacks. Only Silence Remains gives an unconditional attack buff, and if there are only 2 enemies or fewer in battle, a crit rate buff. So it's ideally used in boss fights where the crit rate buff can be consistently maintained. Another solid pick is the free-to-play option River Flows in Spring. It gives a speed and damage bonus buff that disappears when the user gets damaged, so you want a team that aggroes enemies away or gives a strong enough shield to Sushang. If you don't have the shielding for it, especially against bosses with AoE attacks, the buff uptime and damage potential will suffer too. While those are what I generally choose from, here are 2 additional but less recommended options. Subscribe for More gives a damage increase to the user's basic attack and skill, which doubles if the user's energy is at maximum. The effect uptime will be inconsistent on Sushang though, which makes it less ideal. And lastly, the Return to Darkness Light Cone is the Battle Pass Light Cone. It gives a crit rate increase and also has a chance to remove a buff on the target enemy by scoring a crit hit. Its utility is RNG dependent, though it can have situational advantages against self-buffing enemies, but ultimately it's not something I'd recommend to prioritize among the Battle Pass rewards. Since River Flows and Stellar Sea are both good and accessible options already, they can be your go-to options, but if you manage to pick better ones, then by all means use them. Finally, let's go through Sushang's team considerations and the synergies you want to aim for. As expected, her team comps should focus on keeping her alive, as well as buffing her damage or debuffing enemies. The right counter elements are a huge consideration too for breaking enemies efficiently and enabling Sushang's guaranteed sword stances. You also want a team with good skill point management to let Sushang have all the skill points she needs. To start, survivability is the first consideration, so have at least an abundance or preservation teammate. You can also combine abundance and preservation units like Natasha and March together if you value the comfort. The enemy weaknesses can also influence which defensive teammate you'll bring to break them faster. But with March and Japard as ice units with freeze capabilities, they can potentially help keep enemies broken longer by freezing them, giving more opportunities for Sushang's sword stance to proc. March can also help with Sushang's energy needs by shielding her, thereby increasing her aggro and making enemies hit her, which generates a bit of energy. This does come with risks on Sushang though, so ensure that March's shield is thick enough. As for Harmony teammates, Asta's attack and speed buffs will be greatly appreciated by Sushang, and Asta's breaking capabilities will be a huge help against those fire-weak enemies. Tingyun is also amazing for Sushang since she can give damage buffs and recharge Sushang's energy, which leads to faster turn refreshes, faster breaking, and more overall damage. With Bronya as well, Sushang can get in a lot of turns by combining both their advanced forward effects on top of the damage-related buffs Bronya gives. As for the Nihility teammates, Welt can slow down enemies with which synergizes well with Sushang's speed and advance forward buffs. He's our only imaginary unit too, so against weak enemies he will help a lot in triggering Sushang's sword stance. Pela's another great option to shred the entire enemy team's defense to amplify Sushang's damage as well as remove buffs on enemies. Of course, if you want to pair Sushang with another damage dealer, especially to counter enemy weaknesses, then that's definitely fine. Sushang can be played alongside another main DPS or as a hyper carry. One last thing is about team arrangement. If you want to keep Sushang as safe as possible, position her opposite of your unit that has high aggro so that she won't be hit by collateral damage. Preservation and destruction units in particular have the most likelihood of getting attacked by enemies. However, another strategy is to actually place her beside that unit. The reason for doing that is because getting hit generates energy, and if you want to try maximizing Sushang's energy regeneration, then you can also increase the chances of her getting hit by AoE damage. Thankfully, Sushang has built-in survival quality since her minor traces give her defense and HP, and her E2 gives her a damage reduction buff. Of course, you'd want to have a strong enough shielder or healer to make sure she stays alive. Ultimately, it could depend on the battle scenario and how confident you are in your overall survivability. And that's going to be all for this guide on our chicken-wielding rookie. Let me know in the comments what you think of Sushang, whether you're a Sushang haver or a Sushang wanter. I personally think she's an adorable character who has surprised me with how hard she can hit. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all soon. Take care!
Be eager to help those in need. Do one good deed a day and reflect on oneself 3 times a day.